said the house was empty for 30 years, but every night, its lights still flickered. When Elena crossed that forgotten road, she didn't just find a house. She found something that remembered her. Inside those cracked walls, time didn't move forward. It watched. Each room whispered her name. Each shadow waited for her return. But the deeper she went, the more the house began to breathe. The mirrors reflected things that never happened, and voices from the walls begged her to leave. Yet something in her heart kept her there. Because sometimes it's not you who finds the house, it's the house that's been waiting for you. The bus stopped at the edge of a quiet countryside road. Ethan Gray stepped down, suitcase in hand, eyes scanning the fog ahead. The air smelled of rain and rust, and at the end of the path stood an old Victorian house, isolated, watching. Lena Hart waited by the iron gate, her pink dress swaying with the wind. "You really came," she said softly. Ethan smiled faintly. "Couldn't let you face it alone." They walked together up the gravel path, every step echoing in the silence. The house seemed to breathe, its broken windows glinting in dull sunlight. A single light flickered inside, even though no one had lived there for years. Lena hesitated. "They say the house remembers." Ethan looked at her, puzzled. Remembers what? She didn't answer, just opened the gate, the creak louder than it should have been. Somewhere inside, a door shut by itself. As Ethan and Lena entered, dust swirled around their feet like old memories waking up. The smell of damp wood and age filled the air. The hallway stretched long, lined with portraits of strangers whose eyes seemed to follow them. "It's been empty for 20 years, Lena whispered. Ethan brushed a frame with his hand. It fell, shattering. Behind it, faint marks carved into the wall read, "Don't open the basement." He froze. "You saw this before." Lena nodded slowly, her face pale. "My grandfather used to live here. He locked that door himself." The air grew colder. A faint humming came from below, like a machine still running. "Someone's down there," Ethan muttered. But when they looked toward the basement door, it was already slightly open. Daniel slowly walked deeper into the hallway. Each step made the wooden floor creak like a whisper from the past. The storm outside had calmed, but the air inside still carried a silent shiver. He turned on his flashlight. The beam fell on a faded painting of a little girl in a brown frock, smiling faintly. Her eyes, however, looked alive, almost watching him. Daniel leaned closer and noticed something written beneath the frame. "Welcome home, Daniel." His breath caught. Who knew his name here? Suddenly, a faint whisper drifted through the dark. "You finally came back." He turned sharply. At the top of the stairs stood the same girl from the painting, her face half hidden in shadow. "Papa, you left me here." The torch slipped from his hand. Every door slammed shut at once. A chilling voice echoed, "Welcome back." And the house breathed, like it had been waiting all along. Daniel stood frozen at the foot of the stairs. The girl's voice still echoed softly, like wind brushing through broken glass. He gathered courage and slowly stepped toward her, but with each step, the distance between them seemed to stretch. The house warped, the walls breathing, the floor bending slightly like waves. "Who are you?" Daniel whispered. The girl tilted her head. "Don't you remember, Papa? You promised you'd come back before the rain." She raised her hand, holding a small, rusted locket. Daniel's heart dropped. He had buried that same locket years ago with his daughter's toys after the fire. The girl's smile flickered. "You forgot me." The storm outside roared again, as if the house itself cried out in pain. Suddenly, Daniel's flashlight blinked and went dark, leaving only her faint glowing eyes visible. The whisper came again, softer, sadder. "You were supposed to save me." Daniel's trembling hand reached toward the locket. It felt ice cold, as if it had been waiting for years to be touched again. He slowly opened it. Inside was a tiny photograph. Him, his wife, and their daughter, smiling on the front porch of this same house before the fire. But something was different. In the picture, behind them, through the window, a faint figure stood watching. The same girl now in front of him. His chest tightened. The girl whispered, "You said this house would keep me safe." The walls groaned. The portraits on the walls began to twist into screaming faces. "I tried," Daniel gasped, stepping back. The girl's expression softened for a moment, then turned hollow. "You left when I called for you." A tear rolled down Daniel's cheek. The storm outside turned violent, shaking the entire house as the locket snapped shut on its own, and the lights went out. The house began to hum, a low, trembling sound like breath caught in wood. The ghostly girl stepped backward, and suddenly the walls melted into firelight. Daniel blinked. He was no longer in the ruined house, but in the past. The same rooms, alive, filled with laughter, dinner on the table, the scent of fresh bread. His wife hummed softly while their daughter danced near the fireplace. "You remember now," the girl's voice echoed. Though she wasn't there, he turned. She stood outside the window, untouched by time, her eyes glowing faintly. "You left us in the fire," she whispered. Daniel shook his head, tears burning. "I tried to save you." Flames burst through the memory, devouring the walls again. He rushed toward the window, reaching out, but the girl stepped back into the smoke. "Then save me now," she said, fading away. The scene shattered like glass, throwing him back into the cold, broken present. Daniel staggered to his knees, coughing as the vision faded. The cold house returned, silent, soaked in moonlight. On the burned floor, beneath a layer of ash, he saw something glimmer. A locket. He picked it up with trembling fingers. Inside was a tiny photo, his wife, his daughter, and himself. But their faces were scratched out. Only his remained untouched. His breath hitched. "Who did this?" he whispered. From the corner of the room, a door creaked open by itself. Behind it, a staircase descended, one he had never seen before. Each step down pulsed faintly with red light. He hesitated, then clutched the locket tight and started descending. The air grew thicker, a low hum echoing from below. Whispers circled him, forming words. The fire wasn't an accident. His pulse pounded as he reached a metal door at the bottom. On it, carved deep into the rust, were the words, "You lit the match." The metal door groaned as Daniel pushed it open. The air that escaped was warm, like breath from something alive. A long tunnel stretched ahead, lit by faint red bulbs. The walls were covered in handprints, small ones, burned into the concrete. As Daniel walked, echoes followed him, like footsteps just behind. His flashlight flickered, revealing writing along the walls. "Do you remember the night?" His heart raced. He reached a room at the end of the tunnel. Inside were charred furniture pieces and toys, his daughter's teddy bear among them. He froze. On the far wall, a shadow moved. "Who's there?" he called, voice cracking. From the darkness, a figure stepped out, a woman in a black dress, face hidden by her hair. In her trembling hand, she held a burned matchstick. The faint whisper filled the room again. "You never left the fire." Daniel froze as the woman lifted her head. Beneath the tangled hair, her eyes glowed faintly, empty, yet familiar. He whispered, "Anna?" The air thickened. The figure stepped closer, her burnt dress brushing the floor. "You left me in the fire," she said softly, her voice trembling like breaking glass. Daniel shook his head, tears forming. "I tried to save you." The woman smiled, a hollow, cracked smile. "You saved yourself." The red lights dimmed. Whispers crawled along the tunnel walls. Daniel reached forward, but the moment his hand neared her, the tunnel flickered. Suddenly, he was standing back in his house, the same burnt wallpaper around him. The teddy bear lay at his feet, unburned. From the hallway came a child's laughter, distant but alive. Daniel turned slowly, whispering her name again. "Anna?" And this time, a soft voice answered back, "Come play." Daniel stepped into the hallway, every floorboard creaking under his weight. The light flickered, stretching his shadow across the peeling walls. At the end of the hall, a small door was slightly open, golden light spilling through the crack. "Anna?" he whispered again. The laughter grew clearer, playful, innocent, but echoing from somewhere far deeper. He pushed the door open. Inside was a child's room, untouched by time. Toys neatly arranged, drawings pinned to the wall. One showing a family standing by a house on fire. Daniel's breath caught. "This can't be," he muttered. The music box on the dresser began to play softly, the same lullaby Anna loved. Then, the door behind him slammed shut. The air grew thick and cold. In the reflection of the window behind him, the burned woman stood again, closer than before, her voice a whisper. "You finally came back." As the first light of dawn touched the broken windows, Sarah stepped into the hallway. The walls, once whispering secrets, now stood silent, waiting. Her flashlight flickered across the faded wallpaper, landing on a mirror she hadn't seen before. In its reflection, she saw herself, and behind her, the faint outline of a man. She froze. The air turned cold. Slowly, she turned around. But no one was there. "You came back," a soft voice echoed from the mirror. Her breath caught. The reflection still showed the man standing behind her, his eyes filled with sorrow. "Who are you?" she whispered. The figure reached out a hand from within the glass, and as his fingers brushed the surface, it rippled like water. "I'm the one who never left," he said. The mirror cracked, and Sarah felt the room breathe again, as if the house itself had been waiting for this moment. Elena's trembling fingers touched the mirror's edge. The reflection shimmered, and a small, torn photograph slicked out from behind the frame. She picked it up. The picture showed her standing next to the same man she had seen in the reflection. But the photo was dated 20 years ago. Her pulse raced. "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. The mirror's surface rippled again, revealing flashes. Her childhood, the house, the storm, and the promise. "You said you'd wait," the whisper came, not from her mind, but from behind the glass. She stepped back, her breath shaking. The mirror glowed faintly, and the photograph began to burn slowly in her hand. Yet she felt no pain, only warmth and sorrow. Elena's heartbeat echoed through the silent hallway as she followed the faint whisper that came from behind the locked attic door. Dust hung in the air, shimmering under the weak moonlight seeping through cracked windows. Her trembling hand reached for the rusty knob. The whisper grew clearer. It was her name. "Elena." She froze. The voice wasn't behind the door anymore. It was right next to her ear. She turned. No one was there. The air felt alive, breathing with her fear. Gathering courage, she opened the attic door. Inside, a cold wind rushed out, carrying old photographs and a mirror that hadn't been there before. In its reflection, she saw the house, standing in flames, and behind her, a shadow, smiling. Elena pressed her ear against the cold wall. From inside, she heard a faint whisper, her name. She stepped back, heart pounding. The wallpaper began to ripple, as if something was breathing behind it. "Who's there?" she cried, her voice echoing through the silent attic. A soft, childlike laugh responded, followed by scratching sounds crawling toward her. She tore the wallpaper off in panic, revealing an old message carved deep into the wood. "I never left." Her hands trembled. Behind the message, a hollow sound, then a whisper, closer this time, from right behind her ear. "Neither will you." The lights flickered, and the whole wall seemed to move. Elena knelt beside the old wooden floor, hearing a faint hum beneath the boards. The sound pulsed softly, like a heartbeat buried deep in the house. Ethan's voice trembled. "You hear that too?" She nodded, tracing her fingers over the cracks until one narrow line began to glow. "It's coming from below." Ethan lifted a loose plank, and a golden light spilled upward, washing their faces in warmth. Beneath the floor lay a narrow tunnel. Shadows moved inside, too fluid to be human. Elena whispered, "It's not haunted, it's alive." The hum grew louder. The floor vibrated slightly, like the house itself was breathing. The hum turned into a low whisper, a voice calling Elena's name. "Elena, come down." Her eyes widened. Ethan froze. "Who's that?" She leaned closer to the tunnel, the golden light flickering like breath. "It knows my name." Ethan held her arm. "Don't go near it." But the whisper grew clearer, calm, yet powerful, the same tone from the recordings they found in the attic. "Your house remembers." Elena's heartbeat raced. The walls trembled slightly, dust falling from the ceiling. She whispered, "It's not just a voice, it's the house itself." Then, silence. The light blinked once and went out. Darkness swallowed everything. For a long minute, silence ruled the room. Only their breaths echoed. Ethan clicked on his flashlight. "We need to know what's under there." Elena hesitated, her voice trembling. "Ethan, what if it's not meant for us?" He replied quietly, "Then why did it call your name?" They slowly pulled the wooden floor apart. Beneath, a narrow tunnel spiraled down, carved from ancient stone. Cold air rose from below, carrying a faint smell of earth and something metallic, like old blood. Ethan tied a rope around his waist. "Stay close." As they stepped into the darkness, the whisper returned, softer this time, like a lullaby. "Elena, welcome home." The tunnel led them into a vast chamber, walls covered with carvings of faces, hundreds of them, frozen in silent screams. Elena's flashlight flickered. "Ethan, they look alive." At the center stood an old mirror, framed in black wood, its surface rippling like water. Ethan stepped closer, and for a second he saw himself, but older, tired, and standing behind Elena. A whisper filled the air. "The house doesn't forget. It remembers who it swallows." Elena's reflection reached out and smiled, but her real face froze in fear. The ground began to tremble. Ethan shouted, "Run!" But the tunnel was gone. Only darkness remained, and the echo of their last breath. Then, silence. The house waited once more. The mirror rippled again, glowing faintly. Ethan's reflection stepped forward from inside the glass, whispering, "One must stay for the house to rest." Elena shook her head, backing away. "No, we came to find answers, not to become them." But the reflection moved closer, merging its shadow with Ethan's. His body stiffened, eyes turning pale silver. "Elena, go," he said softly, voice no longer his own. Tears filled her eyes as she screamed his name. But the mirror's light pulled him in completely. The carvings on the walls began to fade, the screams silenced, the air still once more. The door behind Elena creaked open, sunlight spilling in, but Ethan was gone. She looked back one last time. The mirror now showed her face, standing alone. Elena stumbled toward the open door, the sunlight almost blinding after the endless dark. Behind her, the house groaned like it was taking its last breath. She stopped at the threshold, trembling, torn between escape and the echo of Ethan's last words. "Go." Her fingers brushed the wooden frame, warm, alive. She turned once more. The mirror stood silent now, reflecting only dust and light. Then, a faint whisper. Ethan's voice. "Thank you." The air grew still. The carvings vanished. The house, quiet, calm, as if it had finally been forgiven. Elena stepped outside, tears mixing with sunlight. When she looked back, the door was gone. Only fog remained, curling softly where the house once stood. The house had waited. Now it could rest.